Well, police arrested dozens of protesters at the University of California in Los Angeles after more than a week of demonstrations on campus. Hundreds of officers arrived at the school overnight to begin breaking down the pro-Palestinian encampment and dispersing demonstrators. Police dismantled barricades and used flashbangs to try and push protesters off the school's grounds. And all of this follows days of clashes at UCLA between protesters and counter-protesters. John Baird from KNX News Radio in Los Angeles was live on air when police began their attempts to disperse demonstrators.
I am kind of in the line of fire in a sense here, because they're moving in my direction. I'm trying to stay out of this thing. Basically, we've got a line of protesters who are backing up with a police line, pushing them. They're trying to push them out of here.
News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti is at UCLA following all of this for us. So, Jonathan, talk to us about the dramatic escalation that occurred overnight and what caused it.
Yeah, Alana, good morning to you. So we're here outside what is left of this encampment. You can see that there are now crews with UCLA that are moving in, picking up the pieces. A much different scene from what we saw unfold live on television earlier this morning. Our colleague Carter Evans was here going live for CBS Morning as police moved in. There were hundreds of pro-Palestinian demonstrators here inside this encampment. They barricaded themselves inside using fences. On the other side of this fence, they were joined by hundreds of other protesters who showed up in support of them. UCLA overnight issued a warning saying that this was an unlawful assembly and said that police would move in if this group did not disband. Those warnings went unheeded, and around 2 o'clock this morning, police, hundreds of them with LA County, moved in. Initially, they were blocked by a chain of protesters who had formed a chain with their arms linking arm to arm. Protesters, as you had mentioned earlier, used these flashbangs to disperse the crowd. There were moments of chaos. Demonstrators remained relatively peaceful throughout. In the end, more than 100 protesters were arrested. On the flip side of our camera, about 20 yards or so, there are about 10 or so protesters that are handcuffed, actually being processed right now. We don't know of any injuries, but you can see as the cleanup continues, cleanup crews are moving these barricades further and further to create a space in a hope and an effort to prevent further protests from gathering later on today here on campus.
Dramatic scenes that are still ongoing in some cases, as you say. I'm wondering if you've had the opportunity to talk to any students or faculty on campus, and have they given you their perspective about how things unfolded?
We just arrived here on scene, but we have heard from a number of protesters, especially those that were part of this encampment that were here 2 nights ago, and expressing frustration between the contrast in response from police, the contrast between today's response and what unfolded just 2 days ago, because you had those demonstrators, largely peaceful, pro-Palestinian, on one side of this barricade, and then you had hundreds of counter-protesters that showed up, and in a fit of violence, throwing projectiles into the crowd. All the while, police, hundreds of them, had gathered here and watched for 2 hours before taking action. In that event 2 nights ago, how many people were arrested? We're being told 0. Now that stands in stark contrast to what unfolded here today, where more than 100 people were arrested. A lot of people expressing frustration over what has been a failure in balance between some campuses, what they have described as a failure in balance to support free speech while also protecting campuses, students, and staff, Lana.
And Jonathan, you said that there's a police presence right now. How long are police expected to be on campus?
That's unclear, but there still are about 100 or so police officers here. They are monitoring the situation. There are some protesters that are gathered here. We have heard them chant at times, but largely right now very peaceful. They are standing guard, making sure that protesters don't return. And as cleanup crews continue, I think these blockades will secure this area. Again, though, it's unclear if more protesters will materialize and return here to campus later on today. That is certainly a concern, as the campus here has struggled to maintain that balance.
All right. Jonathan Vigliotti there at UCLA. Thank you. At Columbia University in New York, things are quieter today. Police broke up the protest there on Tuesday night. And some of the video that you're seeing is from that time. They cleared out a building that demonstrators had taken over. And now we are learning more about the people who were on campus during those demonstrations. We want to bring in now CBS News law enforcement contributor Richard Esposito. He's a former spokesperson for the NYPD as well. So, Rich, we've heard that many of these protesters were outside agitators. We heard the mayor sort of discounting the students' role in more of the violence. What can you actually tell us about what we are learning for real about who was there?
That's an important question, Lana, and good morning. The arrest numbers and names are starting to substantiate very clearly what the mayor said and what officials have said. Of the people arrested, the 282 arrestees at Columbia University and CUNY, about 33 of them were repeat offenders. And of that group, some of them have well-documented past in anarchist movements, with assaulting, in at least 2 cases, assaulting police officers, and noted as aggressive agitators. So the arrest data is starting to clearly support very well what Mayor Adams said.
And we've heard how that has managed to take the attention into a different direction. Richard, does this all signal that people who are professional protesters, and I think there's going to be a lot of our viewers who are surprised even to learn that this is a thing, but that there are professional protesters that these repeat offenders are having an impact on the protests, and how is that connected to the other campuses across the country?
Well, I can't speak specifically to what's going on outside of perhaps UCLA, but what happens is when anarchist folks get involved, and we've seen that in Occupy Wall Street, we've seen that in various past protests in New York, they intend violence. They're not there for free speech. They may not even be there for the cause. Their agenda may be very, very different. And as a result, it influences how the message is amplified, meaning by us in the media, and how people view the message that the peaceful protesters are trying to convey. And that's part of the dilemma the universities have faced.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were continuing. But it's not just a dilemma that the university administrators are facing, but also law enforcement, I imagine, are also trying to navigate these sorts of situations where it is not simply students on campus or people who are trying to exercise their freedom of speech, but it's people who are anti-Semitic, neo-Nazis, anarchists, professional protesters, or any of these people who are trying to sow discord and make these campuses places that are unsafe for the population there.
Yeah, Lana, there's the two parts that you just mentioned are very important, and there's some distinctions. The university officials, they're responsible for the students being able to get the education they're responsible for things that are outside the First Amendment, which is what the police have to care about. They have to consider, are people being harassed so they can't get to class? Does the anti-Semitic rhetoric impact on other students' abilities to come to and from the university? That kind of harassment may be acceptable under the First Amendment, but it's probably not acceptable on the campus. So that's the first piece. For the police, off the campus, when people threaten violence, cause immediate harm, attack police, do things like blocking traffic for long periods of time, as we've seen on bridges in the past, that stuff is not protected speech, and then police will act. Hateful speech is in our country protected, and you have to allow it. So, and the police and the mayor and the city of New York, they clearly do not like it. And if it goes too far over the line, they will stop it. But when it's within the boundaries of the First Amendment, the city has to be restrained.
All right, Richard Esposito, thank you for bringing your insight to all of this.
It's good to see you.